So last week I took care of the bloodhound question part. So this first part is just kind of a summary of the bloodhound questions, and then this second part here is the trade management part, which we'll do in BlackBird. So we'll start off with that. So I'll kind of summarize what's going on here. So we're, basically we're taking trades off of the current day's, high and lows points. And we're, so the bloodhound's going to give us a signal on a retest of the current day's high, or a retest of the current day low. And so once we get that retest, then we want to put a limit order trade out there, and hopefully that limit order gets picked up. And then right here is the description of how to manage the stop loss and where the profit targets are going to get placed as well. So, all right. So, let's get things going here. So let's pull up the chart. So you can see on the chart, I have the current day open, high, low indicator, right? So we can just see that on there. So we got something to work with. So I guess we'll be taking short trades off of the low here. And let's see, I'm going to start an uptrend just to kind of get things going here while I get BlackBird up and running. So, all right, so to get BlackBird up and running, let's go into our strategies. And we'll find SI Blackbird here, add that to our list, and I'm just going to enable it just to get it up and running on the chart. Okay, now you'll notice with the last update here, you'll notice that the trade controls have a slightly different look. So now it's a little more obvious that basically all the trade controls are disabled here. And the reason why the trade controls are disabled is because BlackBird hasn't been programmed yet with any kind of order settings. So if we go into the order settings, we'll see that there's no order set, right? It's empty. So of course you can't use the trade controls, if there's no order set going here. But once we get an order set, so if I just at least put a market order on there and click OK, now you'll notice that the trade controls are ready to go now, because at least we can just place a market order there. So anyways, just a little side note there. So let's get back into our order settings. And so actually let's stop that. So all right, so going back to our question here, right? So we need to load up this bloodhound signal here to at least get signals here. So let's start that. So let's go to our signal, and we're going to use a bloodhound signal for this example. And now let's go load our bloodhound file. So and let's see, it should be last week's, I believe. And I'm going to take a look at the logic tab, and No, it's not this one. Maybe it's another week back. All right, let's go one more week back here. And there we go. Near day's previous high low. So that's the signal that was built. All right, so there it is. That's the signal. And we'll click OK. All right, now the next step is we need to select our entry signal template. Yeah, so there it is. It's near the day previous high low. Select that. Now there's no exit signal with this, and let's we're going to leave the appearance as is, so that way we can see the bloodhound signals on the chart, and we'll show the racing stripes as well. So, and let me all right, before we get going too far, I'm going to slow that trend down a little bit. Price is really starting to take off there. Okay, so now let's go back into BlackBird. Okay, so we have our trade signal set up here, right? We got our bloodhound file loaded, and we have our entry signal, our logic template selected there. So next step is to set up our order. Now, yeah, one thing that I don't have the full write-up of the signals here. So, but what the entry is let's see. The entry is a limit order that's 4 ticks above the low, or if we were looking at the day's high, if we were taking a trade off the high, it'd be 4 ticks below the high or 4 ticks above the low. All right, so let's set that up in BlackBird. So that's going to be a limit order. So let's set up our limit order. And now we need to go into here and we need to set up our initial placement. Right now it just defaults to the closing price of the bar. But we actually want to use, instead of using price, we want to use a indicator value, right? Because we're using the current day open high low indicator plot there to set that. So, all right, so let's go in here. Let's replace the SMA with the correct indicator. So this is the one that we're using. So this tracks the current day's open, high, and low prices. And let's see. So for short trades are taken off of the current high, and long trades are taken off of the low. So I guess you could kind of consider this as a reversal trend kind of signal here, or a counter trend signal, or a bounce signal, something like that, whatever you want to call it. All right, and so we got the indicator. Now remember, we have we're placing the limit order 4 ticks off of the low or 4 ticks off of the high. So if it's a long trade, it's going to be a positive 4 ticks, right? Because it's 4 ticks above the low, so that's a positive. If it's a trade off of the current day's high, then it's 4 ticks below the high, so that would be negative 4 ticks, which is automatically done for us. All right, so there we go. Our initial placement set. There is no trailing actions for this type of signal. And let's set this up so that we want this, we probably want the limit order to cancel after 2 bars. I'm kind of guessing here. I don't know. Maybe we'll say 3 bars. Probably good enough. All right. So yeah, that should take care of the entry there. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So Bloodhound's going to provide the signal, and then this limit order, we've actually set what price the limit order is at. So, okay, so now the next part is get into the profit target and the stop loss. So let's kind of go back to let's go back to our writing here. So trade 1 or T1 is a 25 tick profit, and trade 2 is a 50 tick profit. So we've got 2 different order sets. So we have order set 1 and we have an order set 2. So we have 2 different profit targets. So let's set up, we'll set this up for T1, which is a 25 tick. So I'm just going to select the simple 10 tick, and then we can go in here and adjust it. And we'll just increase this to 25, like so. Right, and then of course for a short trade it's negative 25. So there we go. That's automatically done for us. There we go. That's all there is to do for that. Next is the stop loss. So let's check out the rules for the stop loss. All right, so we're going to place a stop 10 ticks beyond the previous high or low, making it a 14 tick stop loss. So, all right, so what that means is that we want our stop loss to be 10 ticks beyond this low indicator, right? So we have an indicator that's tracking the current day's low price, and so we want the stop loss to be 10 ticks beyond that low, right? So we can do that there. So let's set that up. So we've got a, let's see, do we want trailing or no? Let's just use the 10 tick. Actually, we want to use a indicator based stop loss. So the parabolic SAR, right, that's an indicator. So we'll select this and we'll just replace the parabolic SAR with the appropriate indicator. So put the parabolic SAR in there, and now we'll take our initial placement and let's replace the parabolic SAR with the current day high-low indicator. So let's go find that indicator. There it is. There's our indicator. All right, so for a long trade, we're taking a long trade off of the current low, and we're taking a short trade off of the current high. All right, so get those set correctly. There we go. And so now our offset. So if we're taking a long trade off of the low, then our stop loss is going to be below the indicator plot, right? It's going to be below the red line there, below the red line plot. So it's going to be below it, so that's a negative 10 ticks. So let's set this to negative 10 ticks, like that. All right, so if we go back to the rules here, we're going to place a stop, right, 10 ticks beyond the previous high or low. So in our case, we're going to set it 10 ticks beyond the low, there. So let's go back into this. So there we go. So we got our current day high-low indicator set, and for a long trade, it's going to be 10 ticks below the low. If it's a short trade, it's going to be 10 ticks, a positive 10 ticks, because it's going to be 10 ticks above the high. Right? It's going to be 10 ticks above the high. So if we go back into our indicator settings, so we're using the high for a short trade. So it's going to be 10 ticks above the high and 10 ticks below the low. All right, and let's see, there is a break even in here. So, all right, so here we go. So when price moves away 15 ticks, then we want to move the stop 1 tick beyond the swing high-low. Let's see, okay, so 1 tick beyond the swing high-low. All right, 1 tick beyond the swing high-low. So let's see. I guess, yeah. So I guess wherever the price kind of came down and bounced to get us in that trade, that's probably going to create a swing low for a long trade here. So let's set up that trailing rule. All right, so we'll go into trailing actions, and we're going to set up a custom trailing rule here. So let's add a trailing rule. There we go. So this is basically this is a break even. Break even at 15 ticks, right? So, all right, so the simple way to do this is we'll use a initial delay of 15 ticks. All right, so we're going to wait for 15 ticks in profit or in the direction of the trade. And then once that happens, then we need to move our stop loss somewhere. So we're going to go to actions, because actions is what the action column is actually what moves the order. That's what's going to move our stop loss. And we have to tell BlackBird where to move our stop loss. So we don't want to move it to the last price, right? Because that'll stop you out instantly. We actually want to move it to the swing point. And because the rules here said we're gonna move the stop 1 tick beyond the swing high low, 1 tick beyond. All right, so let's get back into here. So we're gonna move it to the swing pattern here. Let's open this up, and so you'll definitely have to put the swing high-low indicator on your chart and kind of, play with the indicator settings to determine, what number of swings works and what's the best swing strength that you want to use, something like that, right? So, and let's see. Well, I'm actually not sure. So let me back out of this and let's put the indicator on our chart so we have something to work with. So, all right. So let's put the swing. Let's see, where is it? There we go. The swings high-low indicator. We'll put that on the chart there. And let's see. I'm going to turn on, oops, that wrong plot. That's hash. There we go. I'm going to turn on the tightest plots as well. So I'm going to set these to dots. So tightest bottoms. I guess I'll just make that red dots for now, or orange red, good enough. And let's see the tops. I guess we'll go with a green. Here, let's see how does that work out. So I'm just kind of looking at the indicator on the chart, seeing if the indicator's plotting where I like it to plot. And yeah, I guess so. Default settings of 3 and 3, I guess, are working for me. Now I just need to figure out, do I want to use the widest plots or the tightest plots? And let's see. I think we want to use the widest plots in this case, because if we're making new lows, if we're taking trades off of new lows, then those are going to be lower low swing points. Let's see. Well, it's not the first one. Let's see. Actually, I think we want to use the tightest plots. Yeah. Because basically, we're waiting for price to come back again and make another swing point, which I think is going to be the dots. The dotted or the tightest plots, which I have set to dots here. All right. So obviously, the point I'm kind of illustrating is at the second time is you got to know your indicators, that you're using. So obviously, if you're using indicators with BlackBird, you got to know how they work, and how to set them up properly. So, all right. So I'm going to initially set this up using the tightest plots. I think that's what's going to work in this case here. So let's get back into BlackBird. We'll get back into our stop loss, go back into our trailing. All right, we're going to go back into actions and finish setting up our swing patterns here. All right, so for a long trade, we're taking a long trade off of the bottoms. So let's set this to the bottoms. And I determined I'm not going to use the widest, I'm going to use the tightest plots. So there we go. Set those up. And the short trades, right, the opposite settings were selected for us automatically. So the short trades should be good. And the rules also said 1 tick beyond. So let's put a positive 1 tick offset in that. So if we go back to our rules, it says here 1 tick beyond the swing high-low. All right, so let me get back in here. Yeah, so I got a positive 1 tick there. All right, so good. All right, so we got our swing point indicator set up there like that. And since this is a break even, there is no repeat, right? You can only move to break even just once. So we'll just leave the repeat on none, right? Because you're only going to move your stop loss to break even plus something only once. So we're just going to do the action once. So that's all there is to it. So we're waiting for 15 ticks in profit. And then we're going to move our stop loss to the swing point plus a tick. And it only repeats once. So... So there we go. Yeah, that does it for the stop loss. And the next part is to get the second target in here. So we need to create another order set. What we'll do is we'll just copy it from A, right? Because that set up our limit order. So our limit order got set up exactly the same way as it was Even our stop loss got set up exactly the same way as it was. The only thing we have to adjust is our profit target, because remember, in our rules here, T2 is a 50 tick profit target, but the stop loss is the same, and our break-even stop loss rule is the same. So we just need to go into our profit target here and change it to a 50 tick profit target. Like so. All right. I think we're done. So yeah, let's click OK. And I will turn the auto enable on. So we're auto enabling the trades now. All right, before we get started, let me take a look at the board and see what questions have come in here. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, we got this question here from Jeff. What does evaluate using represent on the trailing action tab? So let's open that back up here. We'll just take a look at one of these trailing actions. So, right, evaluate using. So let's say we have multiple rules here, right? So if you have multiple rules set up, it's quite possible that you could have two rules that are wanting to execute at the same time. Or you could even have three, or maybe all four rules are wanting to execute at the same time. So you had to set a priority, which one of the four rules has the priority to actually execute, because you can't execute four different rules. You can't move, one stop loss to four different places, at the same time. You can only move your stop loss to one place. So if you have if you have multiple trailing rules, and you have multiple trailing rules that are all saying, oh, I need to move the order, you have to figure out which one has priority, which one, which one of the trailing rules actually does get executed if multiple trailing rules are trying to execute at the same time. So the evaluate using determines which rule is actually going to get executed. So there's two. So it's just basically four. Four sets of criteria here, and the two most common one that you're going to use is either for a stop loss. Typically, you're going to just keep incrementing your stop loss closer and closer to price. So closest to price, basically price is the market price, right? So the default is action closest to price. So whichever one of these trailing rules is going to move the stop loss closest to price, that's the trailing rule that has priority, right? So if I've got four rules here, and two or three of the rules are all trying to execute at the same time, then whichever rule is going to move my stop loss closest to price or closest to the market price, that's the one that gets executed. Then of course you could say, well, whichever rule is going to push my stop loss furthest away from price, that one has priority, right? So that trading rule, whichever trailing rule is going to move my stop loss furthest away from price, then that would be the one that has priority and gets executed. And then these last two are pretty simple, right? So either the first action to trigger or the last action. Basically, think of it as the first trailing rule to trigger or the last trailing rule that actually executes or triggers, right? So if I got four rules, So whichever rule fires off first, whichever rule actually executes first, you could set that as the one that always has priority. Um, so, um, However, that doesn't mean the first one is the only one that can actually execute. This just sets a priority. So, say for example, this rule here fires off first. My break even fires off first. Well, this one would have priority. However, remember, my repeat is set to none, so it's never going to fire off again. So really, this rule wouldn't have priority over rule B, C, or D, because this one's only going to fire off first. Just to kind of think this through out loud here. So if, I guess the point I'm trying to make though is that if you have rule B, C, and D, so if rule B fires off and is trying to execute, rule B can execute as long as the first rule isn't trying to execute, right? So the evaluate using only tries to prevent a conflict, right? So if you got two trailing rules trying to execute at the same time, the evaluate using, basically it's there to eliminate that conflict. And the evaluate using is going to basically choose which rule does actually get to execute if you have two or more rules trying to move your order at the same time. So this just sets a priority here. So if say like rule C is trying to execute and move your stop loss, as long as the first one, so let's say our break even is the first rule. So if our first rule isn't trying to execute, but rule C is trying to execute, then rule C will go ahead and execute because there's no conflict, right? But if our break even and rule C are trying to, move our stop loss at the same time, then this evaluate using says, well, the break even fired off first, so that has priority. And so rule C just gets ignored, and our break even is given the priority, based on the first action to trigger. So, I hope that kind of makes sense here. All right. So, anyways, we'll just leave it on closest to price, and let me delete the other rules there that we don't need. Okay, and let's see, what was the other question here? Let's see. Oh, Dan's just making a comment here. Shouldn't the number of swings be set to 1 to catch the bottom swing immediately? No, setting the number of swings to 1 actually won't do that, Dan. So, also, if you want, remember there is a documentation page on the evaluate using. So if you kind of want to see some written documentation on that, let's pull that up. Let's go to documentation here. And, all right, so we're working in the OCO sets here. So let's go into there. And let's see. Order entry, stop loss orders. Okay, the order option tab. We're working in the trailing action tab. So here we go, trailing action tab. And there we go, evaluate using. So we can open that up. And there you go, there's a description of each of the evaluate using options there. So all right, so let's click OK. And let's see. Oh, there's one more thing I need to do with BlackBird here, actually. So the way, the way the Bloodhound signal works, actually, BlackBird is going to need to be run with calculate on bar close set to false. So I'm going to have to disable this, and let's set this to false. Re-enable it, click OK, get that going there. Alright, we can see we got our Bloodhound signals on the chart now, so let's set the correct logic template here that's going to show us our entry signals. There we go. So the reason why we need COBC set to false is because by the time, if it's set to true, when we get a signal, price might have already broken, or price might be closer than 4 ticks from the low, from the day's low. Right, so that would kind of violate our rules. So we want to make sure that our limit order gets put out there in plenty of time so that our limit order is an actual 4-tick offset and then gets picked up. All right. So, all right, let me turn on the auto enable button again, and let's pull price down. All right, I'll pull that down, and let's see what happens here. So I haven't actually tested this yet, so we'll see. I might need some adjustments to the Bloodhound signal. Just not sure, but we'll find out pretty soon. All right. So our limit order, so we can see that the low is at 50.39, so hopefully that limit order gets placed soon. Order pending. Order pending. There we go. Bingo. All right. And so now let's set, I'm going to set the trend up, and we'll see what happens when we get to 15 ticks in profit. And we should get our stop loss moving up. All right, so we just got patiently wait here. All right, so we can see here on the market info panel, we're at 5 ticks of profit, 6 ticks, 7 ticks of profit there. All right, 9 ticks. All right, a few more. Here we go, 11, 12 ticks. All right, a few more ticks. And bingo. Oh, interesting. So remember, you got to make sure that your indicators are working as expected. So you notice how basically, so unfortunately the author of that question isn't here, but I would imagine he's probably, wanting to set his stop loss off of that swing low, but you can see our stop loss actually got set off of a previous swing low. So you got to make sure that your indicators can do exactly what you want. So that could be problematic for this trader. I just don't know exactly. But basically this swing low wasn't quite detected yet when we got our 15 ticks in profit. So our stop loss moved to a previous swing low, which is back here. So, well, maybe, let's see. No, yeah, this swing low just wasn't detected in time. At least not for a 5 range chart. Yeah. But in any case, I mean, that's how you would set it up. And then, really comes down to, finding a indicator that's going to recognize your swing points, fast enough for you. So, but that's it. So Jeff might have 2 different actions, okay, so he might have one action for a short bar versus another action for a long bar. So he's got 2 conditions here. One, to move the stop up 10 ticks if after 15 ticks in profit, or to move the stop loss up 20 ticks if he's got 30 ticks in profit. Well, Jeff, there seems to be a component missing, because clearly you're going to get 15 ticks in profit first before you can get 30 ticks in profit. So your trailing action, here, let's just go ahead and build this here. So let's see, let's just get rid of that, and let's just put in a 10 tick stop loss, and let's go to our trailing actions. Let's put in a custom trailing action. We'll add 2 rules here. Alright, so we got rule A, and so rule A, we want to wait for 15 ticks in profit, and then let's see, so we want to move the stop loss up 10 ticks. So let's see, so let's just go, so we'll move it up 10 ticks from the entry price. All right, so there's that one. And then rule B, we're going to wait for 30, let's see, is that right? 30 ticks in profit. But this time we're going to move, there we go, entry price. Now this time we're going to move it up 20 ticks. Let's stretch this out so we can see that action there. All right. So let's see if it happens. Okay, so if it happens on the same bar, well, okay, yeah. So these, let's see, repeat. Okay, so the initial delay actually happens in real time. So since the repeat is set, well, I guess it depends on what your repeat is set to. So the way this is set up right now, this is going to happen in real time here. So, first of all, rule A is going to fire, because as soon as 15 ticks in profit is made, rule A is just going to fire off in real time, regardless of your COBC settings. And then, of course, rule B has to wait for 30 ticks, and then rule B. So there really is no conflict here, right? But but let's just say let's create an artificial conflict here. So, all right, so there we go. So we created an artificial conflict, right? So we got rule A and B, both trying to fire off at the same time as soon as we get 15 ticks, but of course our actions are different. So if we have closest to price if we leave the default settings here for, evaluate using our default settings, then definitely rule B is going to have the priority because it's moving our stop loss, 20 ticks above our entry price, which is going to be closest to where the market price is, right? If that makes sense. So, yeah, okay, so I guess Jeff is using, so the first part of the question says, what if I want to provide two different actions, one for a short bar and one for a long bar? So I guess, if this was set to 30 ticks, I think Jeff is saying that, a 15 tick profit would be a short bar, a 30 tick profit would be a long bar. So if we got a long bar, well, the 15 ticks in profit would also occur in a long bar. So rule A would fire off on a long bar, and then also rule B would fire off on a long bar. If you had a bar long enough to give you 30 ticks in profit. So, yeah. Okay, so Jeff's got a follow-up question. If it's real time, then how does it behave if price goes up 15 ticks, and so it executes rule A? So price goes up 15 ticks, executes rule A, so that moves our stop loss to the entry price plus 10 ticks, and then price moves down. Will it move the stop loss and then stop out immediately on the down move? Yes. Yep. It sure would. It sure would. So let's go ahead and test this out. Let's see here. So let's set this to a market order. And yeah, market order. Okay, click OK. All right, let's close out this trade here. So, all right, let's move price down a little bit. All right, and I'll go long here in just a moment. Just wait for price to come down a little bit more. Okay, let's go long. And see, do I got something here? I do. And why am I not? Oh, wait a minute. Yep, sorry, let's get rid of that. And make sure everything's closed here. Let's see. All right. Let me reset BlackBird here. Let's refresh the chart. And let me just double check my settings. Let's see, we still got that in there. Yep, okay. All right, let's go long. There we go. And let's move our trend up. And we can watch our profit right here in the market info area. Come on, a few more ticks. So you can see it moved in real time there. And then of course, price could come right back down and stop you out. So you bet. Let's change this to, let's say, a 2-minute chart here. So that way we're not dealing with bars closing right away. And okay, so a new bar just opened. Great. So let me pull price down. Okay, we'll go long. Now we'll jack price up. And all right, 8 ticks in profit. There's 8. All right, keep going. Hopefully this bar doesn't close. There you go. So you can see the stop loss moved in real time. And then again, we could pull price down and stopped out. There you go. All right. So, so clearly, BlackBird's a great tool for testing ideas, just like what I just did right there. So I took, Jeff's question and, I just tested it for you in real time so you can see what happens. So, I would encourage you, if you're, testing out theories and ideas, definitely just put BlackBird, on, put your BlackBird on, put your ideas in it, and, and connect. You want to connect to the simulated data feed, and that way you can test your ideas out right then and there, and see how things are going to behave for you. So, yeah. All right. Well, guys, anybody else have any questions? All right, I don't see any questions in here, so let me talk about. Let's go into the trailing actions here. Because the trailing actions is really what kind of gives BlackBird a lot of power here, right? That's what gives NinjaTrader's ATM a lot of power. That's why people like their ATMs, is because you can set up various trailing rules, and so having that same capability is what gives BlackBird a lot of power as well. So let's kind of go over these components here. Right, so the first thing when you're setting up an order, the first thing you need to do is set up the options first. Basically, you need to set your initial placement first. So we're just doing something simple. It's just going to be the entry price minus 10 ticks for a stop loss. So this is just a 10 tick stop loss, right? So that's our initial placement. So then we want to kind of create some, fancy trailing rules here, or some trailing actions. So we'll have to set the mode to custom. If you just want a very simple fixed trailing offset, there you go. You just put it on a standard, fixed trailing, which just means that we're just going to trail the stop loss by whatever the initial placement is. So our initial placement is 10 ticks. So a standard trailing means, so for every tick in profit that price moves in a profitable way, our stop loss is just going to trail the market price by 10 ticks, right? It's just going to be a simple 10 tick offset trailing stop loss. So if you want to make something a little more sophisticated, then we can go into custom here. All right. And for stop losses, right, typically most people want to move their stop losses, closest to price. That's kind of the typical action that we want to happen here. It's very rare that you want to keep your stop loss. It's very rare that you want to move your stop loss away from price, right? Because that just means you're more exposed and you can lose more profit, lose more of those gained profits. So, right. So the default evaluate using is closest to price there. So, the furthest from price, I'd say that this is probably more commonly going to be used in your profit target, right? Using furthest from price, that's probably going to be more commonly used in your profit target, right? So just for an example here, right, you can set up trailing rules for your profit target, so you can actually move your profit target if you wish. So, and you could, move your profit. You could keep moving your profit target away to try and capture more profit, right? More ticks in profit. So, right. So probably moving your profit target away is probably going to be more common, or using furthest from price is probably more common to profit targets. So, right. But, of course, that all depends on the type of trader you are, the type of trading you're doing. So, all right. So anyways, let's go back into our stop loss here. So, all right. So we've got the evaluate using selected. Next thing, we need to add a trailing rule. All right. So the name, it's kind of good to have, to name your rules, so that way you know what it's doing later on. So let's do something simple. Let's do a break even, at 10 ticks. Right. So once we're at 10 ticks of profit, so we'll do a break even here. So for this, we'll use an initial delay, and we'll set our initial delay to 10 ticks. And we're going to use 10 ticks in direction. So in direction means in profit in this case. Right? So now there's definitely other criteria here as well. Let's say, for example, you could just say, we could just say, okay, after a minute goes by, let's just move our stop loss to break even after 1 minute goes by. Maybe your trades need to execute, maybe maybe your profits, or, something needs to happen right away within your trade within a minute, then whatever. So, whatever your initial delay needs to be, right? There's various options here. If you're trading stocks, you're probably going to use points. If you're a day trader, typically you're using ticks. If you're trading stocks, then you might want to use points instead. Or maybe you say, after 6 bars go by, just move my stop loss to this break even. Right, so there's lots of options there. These are all just kind of delay, various types of delays, time-based or price movement based. right? So ticks and points is price movement based, and the others are time based here, right? So let's go to, right, so we have initial delay. So basically the delay, just as it says, it's a delay. So you have to wait at least 10 ticks, right? And then we could have a trigger here as well. So let's do kind of a combination of things. Let's say, let's wait for, let's say $100 here. Oops, let's say $100 in profit, right? So on oil, $100 in profit is the same thing as 10 ticks as our delay, right? So $100 in profits is the same thing as 10 ticks in delay. So let's say we wanted to move to break even after we get $100, but for some reason, you want to wait. You don't want to move to break even right away. Say for some reason you want to wait 10 minutes. So, right, so we'll wait 2 minutes, and then after 2 minutes, we'll check to see if we have $100 in profit. So once our delay has been met, then the trigger action says, okay, well now we're looking for $100 in profit. So after 2 minutes, if we have $100 in profit, then we'll move on to the action part. And then our action could be basically move our stop loss to the entry price, right, which is break even. So, and a lot of people like to do break even plus 1 tick, which I don't blame them. If we're going to move our stop loss to break even, hey, we might as well try and capture at least a tick out of that to pay for the trade, So there, let's rename this here. So we go BE plus 1 for break even plus 1 tick there. And usually a break even rule, it only fires off once, so we'd leave our repeat on none, right? So none means do the action once, right? So there, so if you're waiting for, 10 ticks in profit or $100 in profit on oil, there's kind of several ways that, we could do this. So you could do it this way. Let's see. So we could do it this way. Let me do another one here. So let me kind of set this up. So on oil, both of these rules would be doing the exact same thing, right? So both of these rules are accomplishing the exact same thing. Although let me put the 1 tick in there. There you go. Right. So we can see the action is the same, and the only difference is the trigger versus the delay, right? So both of these rules do the exact same thing, right? Either we wait for $100 in profit, or we set a delay of 10 ticks, but there is no action. There is no trigger. So if we do rule B, we just have a delay waiting for 10 ticks in profit. There's no trigger, and so we just move straight on to the action. So the first rule up here, there's no delay, but the trigger, we have to wait for the trigger to happen. We have to wait for the trigger event to happen, which is waiting for $100 in profit, right? Instead of doing currency, we could just set this to ticks and say, there we go, wait for 10 ticks in profit. right? So our trigger could be, again, waiting for 10 ticks in profit, and then we move our stop loss to the entry price plus 1 tick. And they're both set to repeat. The repeat is only going to happen once. So, both of these rules will only fire off once because our repeat is left at none, is set to none there. So, everything. So when you're setting up a trailing rule, everything happens in order. So, right. So the initial delay has to occur first. Then, if there is a trigger, then the trigger has to occur. And then, once the delay is over with, and then once the trigger happens, then the action can take place. All right, so the action has to wait for the trigger and the initial delay. So if there is no initial delay, then we're just waiting for the trigger to occur, and then the action takes place. And then we just decide how many times do we want to allow this rule to repeat itself. So that's kind of the summary of how a trailing rule happens, right? So, and the power really comes in with using these triggers. So the various triggers we have is you could use a bloodhound trigger, right? So you could set up some bloodhound logic to look for very specific situations, with some price action or some, situations with some indicators that you're using, to create a bloodhound signal, which in this case, if we're using a bloodhound signal here inside of the trailing rules, then that's not a trade signal. That's just a signal to, to do something with your stop loss. All right, so bloodhound doesn't have to be used just for trade signals only. Bloodhound really is just a way of creating kind of a signal for anything. It could be a signal for anything. Signals don't have to be trading signals. It could be a warning signal, or it could be a, time to move your stop loss up type of signal, or it could be a, time to take profits kind of signal, right? The signals could be whatever you define them to be. They're not limited to just trade signals. All right, so there you go. Bloodhound's probably, the most powerful trigger event on there. But then there are some, there are some simple indicator type of triggering events. So BlackBird does not get very advanced with indicator logic. That's not its purpose. Really, Bloodhound is that's what Bloodhound is designed for, is to get really sophisticated with indicator logic. But BlackBird, we can have at least some basic stuff here. So if you got an indicator, you could look for your indicator to be less than some value, equal to some value, or greater than some value, right? So if you're familiar with Bloodhound, then basically the indicator value trigger is essentially, it's kind of it's similar to the threshold solver, right? So if you're looking for, let's see, let's do something that's kind of simple here. Yeah. Let's just use the CCI here, right? CCI. So, you could look for the CCI to be less than -100. So if the CCI or let's do something extreme like 200. Let's say, if the CCI goes to negative 200, then, if you're in a long trade and your CCI goes to negative 200, then do something, right? So, BlackBird can do some simple things. Let's see here. So if you're in a short trade, if your CCI goes greater than a positive 200, then do something, right? So there's some, basic kind of indicator triggers that you can use in BlackBird here. You can do price versus an indicator. So if you're doing price versus an indicator, then the only way this is going to work is if your indicator plots on the price panel, right? So your indicator has to be plotting in relationship to price, right? So, price versus indicator, a common, I guess something typical would be like a moving average, right? Price versus a moving average. And, you're going to say, well, is price equal to or above the moving average? Are we looking for price to be above the moving average? Are we looking for price to be below the moving average? So if we're looking for price to be above the moving average for a long trade, or price to be below, is price below the moving average when we're in a short trade situation, and that could be our triggering event. So if price ever goes above some moving average, that's our triggering event, and then we'll move our stop loss somewhere, something like that. So once again, just very simple, indicator logic here built into BlackBird. And then, of course, looking for profit or loss, such as that. Right, so you can look for a profit or you can look for a loss. Right, you look for a profit. There's various ways to look for profit. Are you looking for ticks in profit? Points, if you're trading stocks, then you might be looking for points in profit. Or you can just put a dollar amount, if you like using dollar amounts. So therefore, regardless of what you're trading, you could just say, after $100 in profit on whatever you're trading, you could use currency if you wanted. Or, of course, you could use ATRs, right? So, as well. Right, so there you go. So some triggering events, and then the second most powerful part is the action. So you have a lot of flexibility. The action is what is where your stop loss gets moved to, right? The action tells where your stop loss is going to get moved to, right? So, right, in this case, we're moving our stop loss to the entry price, plus one tick, right? So, but there are a couple of actions. You could freeze the order. So you could have some kind of custom triggering event that says, freeze the order. And once an order has been frozen, it's frozen for the remainder of the trade. There's no way to unfreeze an order, right? So, when you freeze an order, make sure that you're absolutely sure that you don't want, that you want to lock your stop loss in place. Because once your stop loss has been frozen, you can't move it again, ever, until that trade's closed out. So, right, or you could remove the order, which, again, if you remove a stop loss, it's removed for the remainder of the trade. You can't remove a stop loss and then say, oh no, I want it back again. You just can't do that. So if you got some reason why you'd want to remove a stop loss and then restore it, then don't remove it. Just move it way out of the way, right? Because if you're removing a stop loss order, then obviously you have an unlimited exposure, which is very risky. So instead of ever removing a stop loss, just set up some kind of trailing rule that's just going to move your stop loss way, way out of the way. So that way your stop loss still exists, and then you could have another trailing rule that would restore, basically move your stop loss back up, to where price is at, or where, somewhere relative to your entry price. You could move your stop loss back into place again afterwards. So again, freezing an order, that's an absolute. You cannot undo that. Removing an order, that's an absolute. You cannot undo that. So, but those are options, but really, I'd say 99.9% of the time, you're just going to use the action to move your order, right? That's basically what the action is going to be used for, is to, set up the rules that say, what price to move your stop loss to. So, right. So if you're going to move your stop loss, there's various ways that you can move your stop loss, right? You could use price bars, right? You could use various, prices and move your stop loss to, various prices. Or you could use some kind of an indicator value. Move your stop loss to an indicator value, such as a moving average, maybe. You could have your stop loss follow a moving average, or have your stop loss follow the parabolic SAR, or have your stop loss follow the ANA super trend, right? Or the high-low activator, which super trend, high-low activator, kind of the same thing. There's also a chandelier stop, right? You can have your stop loss follow the chandelier stop. Once again, it's kind of like the ANA super trend. Just different formulas there. Right, so you could find some indicator that you want to set your stop loss to. Or you could use swing points as well. So in the previous example, right, we moved our stop loss to a swing point, and so this swing point uses the swings, highs, lows indicator, right, that comes with shark indicators. So, right, which is you can see that indicator on my chart there, right? That's the dashed blue line and the blue dots there, marking the swing high there. Yeah. So, or if you're into using the linear regression channel, there you go. You could use the linear regression channel, set your period, set your channel width, and and then figure out which channel line you want to use, the upper channel line or the middle one, lower one. So so it conceptually, trailing rules are simple, in their concept, but there's just a lot of options here that make it seem complicated. But once you kind of look around these options, you'll see that it really doesn't get all that complicated. So just kind of mixing and matching all these options to build, with all these different options available to you, you can build virtually just about anything, you need. Have a great rest your week and have a great weekend. All right. We'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.